Capricorn, Capricorn. Say this, and Capricorn will pretend you never existed. Number 5 is brutal. There are words that wound. And then there are words that erase. Words so devastating to a Capricorn that once you say them, something shifts permanently in their eyes. Not anger, not tears. Something far more chilling, complete indifference. As if you become a stranger they happen to know the name of. And here's what terrifies people the most about Capricorn. They won't fight you. They won't argue. They won't give you the satisfaction of a reaction. They'll simply delete you from their emotional hard drive like corrupted data that's no longer worth saving. Today, we're diving into the 5 specific things you can say to a Capricorn that will make them treat you like you never existed. And I'm warning you now, number 5 is so brutal that even saying it out loud might make you realize you've already lost a Capricorn in your life. If you want to understand what happens behind those cold, unreachable eyes when certain words are spoken, if you want to know why Capricorn can cut people off with surgical precision and never look back, then hit that subscribe button and leave a like right now. Because what you're about to learn might save a relationship or help you understand why one ended without explanation. Let's begin. Let me tell you what happens inside a Capricorn when you say these words. On the surface, nothing. They might nod, might even agree with a small, tight smile. Yeah, I guess I am. Cool, composed, unfazed. But inside, you just confirmed their deepest fear about themselves. Because here's what most people don't understand about Capricorn. They feel everything. Every slight, every disappointment, every moment of rejection. They feel it with an intensity that would break most people. But they learned a long time ago that showing emotion is a liability. They learned that tears are seen as weakness. That vulnerability gets weaponized. That the world doesn't have patience for feelings when there's work to be done, bills to be paid, responsibilities to shoulder. So Capricorn built walls. Not because they're cold, but because they're protecting something incredibly fragile. The hope that someone someday will care enough to look past the armor and see the human trembling underneath. And when you call them cold, when you label them emotionless, you're not just insulting them. You're telling them that their greatest survival strategy has become their greatest flaw. That the very thing they did to protect themselves from a harsh world has made them unlovable in your eyes. Think about this. Have you ever protected yourself so well that people mistook your armor for your skin? Have you ever been called too strong when inside you were barely holding together? That's Capricorn. Every single day. But here's where it gets heartbreaking. When you call Capricorn cold, they don't defend themselves. They don't explain that they cry alone at 3 a.m. They don't tell you about the ocean of feelings they navigate in silence. They don't reveal that they've memorized every kind thing you've ever said to them, because affirmation is so rare in their world. No, they just agree with you. And in that agreement, they make a decision. If this is how you see me, then this is all you'll ever get from me. And they start the process of emotional detachment, slowly, methodically, like turning down a dial degree by degree until what was once warm becomes frozen solid. You'll still see them. You'll still interact. But you'll never again have access to the soft parts. The vulnerable confessions at midnight. The dreams they don't share with anyone. The version of them that laughs until tears come. That person, dead to you. Not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. Because Capricorn learned something brutal early in life. If you're going to be called cold anyway, you might as well actually be cold. It hurts less than being vulnerable with someone who can't see your warmth even when you're offering it. So they become exactly what you accuse them of being. Not because you were right, but because it's easier to be the villain in your story than to keep auditioning for a role you'll never get. The role of someone whose emotional complexity is actually valued. And years later, when you think back and wonder why Capricorn cut you off so completely, remember, you didn't just criticize them. You rejected the most courageous thing they ever did, which was letting you close enough to form an opinion in the first place. And Capricorn never makes that mistake twice. Not with you, anyway. This one cuts deeper than you'll ever know. When you say this to Capricorn, what you think you're saying is, you have the wrong priorities. But what Capricorn hears is, everything you've sacrificed means nothing. Every hour you've worked to build security, every time you chose responsibility over pleasure, every moment you've been the reliable one while everyone else got to be spontaneous. All of that makes you a bad person. Let me paint you a picture of what work actually means to Capricorn. Work isn't just a job. It's proof of worth. It's the language they speak when I love you feels too vulnerable to say. It's how they build the world they wish they'd grown up in. One where there's always enough, where no one has to worry, where security isn't a luxury, but a guarantee. When Capricorn works late, they're not choosing a desk over a person. They're choosing to be the kind of person who can be depended on, who doesn't make promises they can't keep, who doesn't build relationships on unstable ground. Because Capricorn knows something most people learn too late. Love without stability is just beautiful chaos. And chaos, no matter how beautiful, eventually destroys everything it touches. So, yes, Capricorn works. They build. They plan. They sacrifice immediate pleasure for long-term security. Not because they don't care about people, but because they care so much that they're willing to be misunderstood if it means the people they love are protected. But when you accuse them of caring more about work than people, you're telling them their love language is invalid. That everything they've done, every missed party to pay a bill, every late night to secure a future, every practical decision made with other people's well-being in mind, has been invisible and worthless to you. And here's the devastating part. Capricorn won't argue with you about this. They won't list everything they've done, won't defend their choices, won't explain that the reason they work so hard is because they care about people, not despite it. They'll just look at you with those ancient, tired eyes and think, you don't understand sacrifice. And I can't make you understand something you've never had to do. And then, quietly, without announcement, they'll reclassify you. From person I'm building a future with to person who will never appreciate what I build. You become someone they're polite to, professional with even, but someone they no longer invest in. Because investment requires belief that the other person values what you're building. And you just told them they don't. The cruelest irony? Years from now, when life gets hard, when the bills pile up, when security becomes scarce, when reliability matters more than spontaneity, you'll finally understand why Capricorn worked so hard. You'll see that their obsession with work was actually obsession with making sure the people they loved never had to struggle the way they did. But by then, Capricorn will be building for someone else. Someone who understood that when Capricorn chooses work, they're not choosing against you. They're choosing for a future where you never have to worry about anything except whether you're loved. And you are. You were. So much so that they were willing to be the bad guy, the workaholic, the cold one, if it meant you were safe. But you didn't see it. So now they'll make sure you don't see them either. Oh, this one. This phrase is like asking a mountain why it doesn't just float away. When you say this to Capricorn, you're asking them to violate their fundamental nature. You're asking them to become someone they spent their entire life learning not to be. Let me explain something about Capricorn's relationship with memory, with grudges, with things they can't let go. Capricorn doesn't hold grudges. They hold evidence. Every betrayal, every broken promise, every moment you showed them who you really are, they file it away. Not out of pettiness, but out of pattern recognition. Because Capricorn learned early that people don't change as often as they apologize. That "I'm sorry" is easy when you know you'll be forgiven. That second chances become meaningless when you're giving someone their 17th. So when you ask why they can't let something go, what you're really asking is, why won't you pretend this didn't happen? Why won't you reset to zero and give me unlimited chances to hurt you the same way? And Capricorn, with their ancient soul and tired wisdom, knows the answer. Because forgetting the lesson means repeating the pain. Think about it this way. If you touched a hot stove and got burned, would someone asking you to let it go make you touch it again? Or would you remember, adjust, protect yourself? That's all Capricorn is doing. They're not being unforgiving. They're being smart. They're honoring the pain enough to learn from it instead of just performing emotional amnesia to make you comfortable. But here's where it gets complicated. When you accuse Capricorn of not letting things go, you're also revealing something about yourself. You're revealing that you want access to their trust without having rebuilt it, that you want the benefits of their vulnerability without respecting why the walls went up in the first place. And that tells Capricorn everything they need to know about you. Because someone who truly cares doesn't ask you to forget. They ask, what can I do to help you heal? How can I prove I've changed? What do I need to rebuild? But someone who just wants things to be easy again? They ask you to let it go, to move on, to stop living in the past, as if your pain is an inconvenience to their comfort. And when Capricorn hears this, something clicks into place. A final piece of a puzzle they've been watching you assemble. This person doesn't want to be better. They just want me to ask for less. And that's when you become invisible to them. Not with drama, not with confrontation, but with a simple, devastating recalibration. You are no longer someone whose opinion matters. You can be in the same room, the same conversation, the same life even. But Capricorn has emotionally evicted you. You're a tenant who lost their lease, still living in the building, but no longer welcome in the home. And here's what will haunt you. Capricorn won't tell you this happened. You'll just notice over time that they don't share anymore. Don't ask your opinion. Don't seem affected by your presence or absence. You've become neutral. Background noise. Someone they once knew. And when you finally ask, why are you so distant, they'll probably say something polite. Something like, I'm just busy, or nothing's wrong. But the truth they'll never say out loud, is this. I didn't let go of what you did. I let go of you. Before we continue to phrase number 4, I need to know. Have you ever been told to just let things go when the wound was still fresh? Have you been made to feel like your memory was the problem, instead of the thing that hurt you in the first place? Drop a comment below. Tell me your story. Because sometimes knowing you're not alone in protecting yourself is the validation you needed all along. And if you're relating to this on a deep level, make sure you're subscribed, because we're about to dive even deeper. This phrase. This is the one that makes Capricorn's blood run cold. Not because it's true, but because it's so catastrophically misunderstood that defending against it feels impossible. Let me tell you what's really happening when Capricorn seems superior or above it all. They're not looking down at you. They're looking ahead, trying to survive. Capricorn has standards. High ones. Not because they think they're better than other people, but because they held themselves to impossible standards first and barely survived the process. Every achievement you see, built on foundations of self-doubt and relentless self-criticism. Every success, earned through nights of wondering if they're good enough, smart enough, worthy enough. Capricorn doesn't think they're better than you. They think they're not good enough yet. And they're terrified that if they lower their standards, they'll prove their worst fear right. That they're ordinary, forgettable, unworthy of the life they're trying to build. So when you accuse them of thinking they're better than everyone, you're not seeing their pride. You're seeing their defense mechanism against irrelevance. Because Capricorn learned something brutal. The world doesn't celebrate potential. It celebrates results. And if you're not producing, achieving, climbing, building, you're invisible, disposable. So yes, Capricorn keeps climbing. Not to look down at you, but to keep from drowning in the fear that if they stop, they'll disappear. But here's what destroys them about this accusation. When you say you think you're better than everyone, what Capricorn hears is, your standards make me feel inadequate, and instead of rising to meet them, I'm going to make you the villain for having them. And that's unforgivable to Capricorn. Not because they can't accept criticism, but because this particular criticism punishes them for not making you comfortable with your own choices. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been around someone who makes you feel like you should be doing more with your life? Not because they said anything, but just because their existence is a mirror reflecting possibilities you're not pursuing? That discomfort you feel? That's not them thinking they're better. That's you knowing you could be doing more. And rather than deal with that discomfort, it's easier to label them arrogant, superior, self-righteous. But Capricorn knows the difference between someone genuinely critiquing their arrogance and someone projecting their own insecurity. And when you say you think you're better than everyone, Capricorn doesn't hear concern. They hear resentment. They hear that their growth makes you uncomfortable, that their discipline feels like judgment even when it was never about you. And that's when they make a decision. If my growth threatens you, then you can't be part of my future. Simple as that. Because Capricorn has fought too hard, sacrificed too much, and climbed too far to dim their light so someone else feels better about staying in the dark. They won't apologize for their standards, won't defend their ambition, won't shrink to fit your comfort zone. They'll just move on to people who celebrate growth instead of resenting it, to relationships that elevate instead of anchor, to spaces where excellence is inspirational, not threatening. And you become a memory, a cautionary tale they'll tell themselves when they're tempted to lower their standards to keep someone around. Remember what happened when you tried to dim yourself? You lost yourself and kept someone who didn't even want the real you anyway. So no, Capricorn doesn't think they're better than you. But after you say this, they'll definitely think they're better off without you. And they'll be right. We've arrived. The most brutal phrase. The one that doesn't just end relationships. It erases them from Capricorn's history. When you compare Capricorn to someone who deeply wounded them, you're not making an observation. You're triggering an extinction-level event in your relationship with them. Let me explain why this is so catastrophically destructive. Capricorn carries wounds. Old ones. Deep ones. Wounds from people who were supposed to protect them but didn't. Who were supposed to stay but left. Who were supposed to love them but made that love conditional on performance, perfection, silence. And every single day, Capricorn fights not to become those people. They analyze their own behavior with brutal honesty. They catch themselves repeating patterns and force themselves to break them. They work tirelessly to be different, better, safer than the people who hurt them. It's their life's work, this becoming, this refusing to pass on the pain they inherited. And then someone they trusted, someone they let close, someone they thought finally saw them clearly, look them in the eye and say, "You're just like your father who abandoned you. You're becoming your mother who was never satisfied. You're exactly like your ex who made you feel worthless." And in that moment, everything Capricorn built inside themselves collapses. Not because you're right, but because you just told them their greatest fear is true, that no matter how hard they try, they can't escape becoming the thing they hate most. Do you understand how devastating that is? To spend your entire life running from a shadow, only to have someone you love tell you the shadow caught you anyway? Let me tell you what happens in Capricorn's mind after you say this. First, there's shock, a cold, spreading numbness. Then, there's the instant replay of every moment they tried to be different. Every time they chose patience when anger would have been easier. Every time they stayed when leaving would have hurt less. Every time they loved harder than they were loved back because they refused to be the one who gave up. And all of it, all of that growth, that effort, that painful evolution, means nothing to you. Because in one sentence, you reduced their entire journey to the very thing they've been fighting against. That's not criticism. That's annihilation. And here's what Capricorn does with annihilation. They return it. Not with words. Not with revenge. But with something far more permanent. Complete emotional removal. When you compare Capricorn to their trauma, you don't get to be in their life anymore. Not as a friend. Not as family. Not even as an enemy worth thinking about. You become nothing. A blank space where a person used to be. Capricorn won't argue. Won't defend. Won't explain why you're wrong. Because explaining would require them to care about your opinion. And after what you said, your opinion no longer exists to them. You could apologize 1,000 times. Could take it back, explain you didn't mean it. Swear you were just angry. Doesn't matter. Because you showed Capricorn something they can never unsee. That when you wanted to hurt them, you reached for the deepest wound you knew they had. That you weaponized their vulnerability. That their pain was always a loaded gun you were willing to fire when things got hard. And Capricorn has a rule. Anyone who uses your trauma against you doesn't deserve access to your healing. So you're out. Permanently. Not with hatred. which would at least mean you still matter. But with indifference, so complete it's like you never existed. And years from now, if someone mentions your name, Capricorn might pause for just a second, not because they're remembering you, but because they're remembering who they were before they learned what you were capable of. And then they'll move on. Because that's what Capricorn does with people who prove they can't be trusted with the most tender parts of their soul. They forget you existed and keep building a life where people like you never get close enough to destroy them again. So here we are. 5 phrases. 5 weapons disguised as words. 5 ways to make Capricorn decide you're not worth remembering. But let's talk about what's really happening beneath all of this. Because it's not about the word themselves, is it? It's about what the words reveal. When you call Capricorn cold, you reveal you never looked beneath the surface. When you say they care more about work than people, you reveal you don't understand sacrifice. When you ask why they can't let things go, you reveal you value your comfort over their healing. When you accuse them of superiority, you reveal their growth threatens your stagnation. And when you compare them to their trauma, you reveal you were never safe to begin with. Every single one of these phrases tells Capricorn the same devastating truth. I don't actually see you. I see a version of you that's convenient for me. And when the real you becomes inconvenient, I'll punish you for it. And that's why Capricorn disappears. Not because they're unforgiving. Not because they're cold or cruel or incapable of second chances. But because they've learned, through years of pain, betrayal, and fighting to become something better than their circumstances, that some people will never value what they offer. Some people will always see their strength as coldness, their discipline as judgment, their memory as grudge-holding, their standards as arrogance, their trauma as ammunition. And Capricorn is done trying to prove their humanity to people who are determined to see them as stone. So they become stone. Not because you were right about them, but because stone can't be hurt by people who don't deserve to touch it. The tragedy isn't that Capricorn cuts people off. The tragedy is that they have to. If you made it to the end of this video, you're probably feeling something heavy right now. Maybe you're the Capricorn who's been called all these things and finally feels seen. Or maybe you're the person who said one of these phrases and just realized why someone you cared about disappeared. And here's what I want you to know. Words aren't just sounds. They're choices. Choices about whether to understand or to judge. Whether to heal or to wound. Whether to see someone's complexity or to reduce them to the parts that make you uncomfortable. And if you love a Capricorn, if you truly love them, learn their language. See their work as love. Their standards as self-protection. Their memory as wisdom. Their growth as inspiration. Their wounds as sacred ground you're honored to be trusted with. Because Capricorn doesn't need you to be perfect. They just need you to be safe. To be someone who sees their walls and understands why they're there instead of demanding they come down before you've proven you won't hurt what's behind them. And if you are Capricorn, you're not too much. You're not too cold, too ambitious, too unforgiving, too anything. You're just waiting for people who speak your language. Who understand that love, for you, looks like building, like remembering, like becoming. And those people exist. I promise. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been told one of these phrases? Or have you said one and watched someone disappear? What happened? How did it change the relationship? Write it in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. And if this video resonated with you, subscribe, hit that like button, and share this with someone who needs to understand Capricorn better. Or with a Capricorn who needs to know they're not alone. Because sometimes the most healing thing we can do is name what hurt us, and then choose not to pass that hurt on. See you in the next one. Blackheart.